All right, back with Conversations with Keith, continuing our political discussions. Having Pendleton County native, Mark Hart, is also your 78th District, Kentucky House of the Representatives representative. First one from Pendleton County, first Pendleton County since when? 1962. So he's...
And there's a connection to the Outlook with that.
Oh, what is it? I didn't know that.
Warren Schoner's father-in-law was the last one to serve since me, or served before me.
Oh, I didn't know. Was he a representative or senator?
He was a state representative with the Democratic Party, and his name was Eugene Hancock.
Eugene Hancock. I did not know that.
His daughter Jeevy gave me music and piano lessons.
It's a small world all the way around.
And we went to church together as well. It had been his grandson Jeff Schoner and Jenny Schoner that used to.
Now I know Jenny Schoner. Yeah, we went to church in Antioch.
Well, before she started going to Antioch, they were members and grew up in the Fountain Christian Church. So
okay.
We're all, you know how it is. We're all connected.
Absolutely. Very
but that's a little foul with Outlook because Warren ran the Outlook for so many years.
Yeah, actually, I think it was his father started it, wasn't it?
So,
Something like that back over 100 years ago.
But his
since
father
1907.
was the last state representative from Pendleton County.
Huh.
Eugene Hancock in 1962.
I knew it was in the 60s, didn't realize there was a Warren Schoner Falmouth Outlook connection there. Well, actually, the same question we've been starting with everybody. Most of the people, obviously, in Pendleton County know who you are, but there'll probably be somebody from Scott County, Harrison County that may look in on this video, and we just ask them, who is Mark Hart?
Well, Mark Hart, born and raised in Falmouth, Kentucky. I actually lived next door to the house I grew up in.
That happens all the time.
Well, here, since it's quiet, let me put my phone on. Let me mute. Mark Hart, born and raised in Falmouth, Kentucky. My family owned and operated Hart Pontiac for years. 1998, when my grandfather passed away, my dad decided to retire, and that's the year that the Harts got out of the car business. But from 1936 to 1998, the Harts were in the car business, and actually Grandpa started out selling International Harvester implements and tractors, and they also
same building right down here.
Well, yeah, I do. I think it was the same building.
Okay.
If I'm correct, it is the same building. Now, one of the older people watching this video might be able to correct me on that, but if my memory serves me, my whole life it was in that building.
And the International Harvesters is the red tractors and those kind of things, right?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the building, the side that Stephen Blades has his antique car business in now was the Tractor and International side, and the other side was the Pontiac side.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of how. So
cool. So what happened? I mean, after you got out of the business and such.
Well, I'm a 1987 graduate of Pendleton County High School, and from there I went on to college at Northern Kentucky University. Got a degree in biology, and I worked for a little while at University of Cincinnati before I settled on my career in the fire service, working for the Lexington Fire Department. I retired from the Lexington Fire Department as a lieutenant in January of 2017, just a couple days after I took office.
Gotcha.
And so I still work in the emergency services business as a paramedic. I work one shift, or I try to work one shift a week for Pendleton County Ambulance Service here. It helps me maintain my license and my skills. And you know, it's one of the professions we never truly get out of it.
Yeah.
But I've been a career firefighter, paramedic most of my adult life. I actually started out, my grandfather and my father were both fire chiefs of the Falmouth Fire Department. That's kind of where I got the bug to do it. But in between the time that I went to work for Lexington and graduated college, I also joined and served almost 9 years in the Kentucky Army National Guard.
Okay.
So,
what was your role in the Army National Guard?
The first 6 years, I was an artilleryman in a combat unit. It was the 2nd 138th Field Artillery unit out of Carrollton, Kentucky. It was 8 Alpha Battery, and we were a field artillery unit. My last almost 3 years, I'm just a couple months shy of having 9 years, but my last almost 3 years, I was with the combat MP unit.
What the MP being the military police?
And that was the 940th MP company from Walton, Kentucky.
Okay. Now, on the artillery, were you the one calling in the
Actually,
ordnance, or?
I worked on what they call it's the M109 howitzer, and it looks like a giant tank. The difference between us and a tank, we had to be stationary when we fired
Gotcha.
our cannon or our weapon, but we could, and plus we were shooting at targets several miles away, where tanks you shoot what you can see.
How far?
It all depends, and I don't know if I remember the exact. We had a round. It was a rocket assisted projectile that could actually we could fire it and we could hit a target. I think up to 4.5-5 miles away.
Wow.
But most of the time it wasn't quite that far, but it was a couple miles.
So I guess when you all would go down on your monthly basis of training,
Yeah,
you would be at a location that
We
is
spent a lot of time at
4 or 5 miles away that you could actually practice that
Yeah.
distance.
We
Wow.
we spent a lot of time at Fort Knox, and they had to range because that was the home of the tank corps anyways,
Okay.
and so they had the ranges there to where we could go out on the range.
So how long is the range?
You know, I don't really know. It was big enough for us to set up and shoot.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was quite a.
Well, 4 to 5 miles
Yeah.
for that one.
And of course the artillery pieces now they might even have a longer range than that.
Yeah.
But that was my mixed up. But what I was part of the cannon crew. I was a cannon crew member, so we were the guys that actually loaded the shells and pulled the lanyard and fired the cannon.
Okay. All right.
And then when I went to the MP company, I was cross trained. Well, I trained as a combat or as an MP, and then was assigned to a combat MP company. But because I was a licensed paramedic, they dual slot me. I was also working as a medic.
Gotcha.
So-
Well, I was going to ask a question. You had mentioned that your father and your grandfather was in the fire department right across the street here, but you chose to go into EAMT services. Why the switch there? Why not just
I don't
continue
know.
around fire?
When I first got into with the Falmouth Fire Department, some of the firemen had taken some EMT classes, and at the time, EMS was, for the most part, and it's still true today, EMS and fire service are intertwined, and a lot of fire departments do both. The Lexington Fire Department that I worked for, they did all the emergency services in Fayette County except for law enforcement. End
Okay.
of it. The police department done that, and then we done fire and EMS.
Gotcha.
And so, and a lot of departments are like that. Pillsbury County, in Scott County, they're separate. You got two different. In some counties, that works better. I think in our county, it works that way because we've got a core of volunteers that do a really good job as volunteers on the fire service. But by going ALS and with the advanced medical training that we can now provide, it takes a little bit more than what a volunteer really has.
ALS being the Advanced Life Service, which is a paramedic or an EMT that's on board who can administer medicine.
Just a paramedic. EMT.
Just a
can't.
okay, just a
If it's
paramedic.
just EMTs, it's basic life support.
Uh-huh.
Ours is advanced life support, but in a pinch, if we needed an extra crew, we could put two EMTs together and we could make a basic life support truck,
Okay.
like in a disaster or something
Yeah.
where we could transport people.
But the important part for us out here in this county,
We
being
can
so far
administer
away from
drugs.
help or a hospital, is you can administer drugs,
Yeah.
do that better, more chances of saving a life.
Yes.
Yeah, totally understand that. Well, kind of going on into our questions, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, starting off, and then I think for the most part, this campaign has not done this, but there's a tone in politics right now that is just so toxic. Whether, especially, we're taping today on the day that the FBI investigation is coming out by the Kavanaugh, and that's just going to be a horrible next 2 or 3 days as they go through that process. But just that whole environment is so toxic. Is there anything that we can do to, I don't know if it's, I don't want to say that our society is worse off now because in the 70s you had the Vietnam and it was bad. You had the civil rights riots in the 60s and everything, and you had McCarthyism. I mean, we have periods of history in our country that were like this, that this is not unusual. But what can we do right now to kind of try to get out of this toxic environment that we're in?
That's a very good question. I don't really know the answer. Somebody else asked me a similar question the other day, and this is a person I've known for a long time, and we actually ran into each other when we were sitting there eating lunch, and they said, well, how's your campaign going? I said, I think my campaign's going pretty good. I said, you know, I'll give my opponent credit. My opponent has not attacked me or done anything that I would consider
Over the line?
yeah, over the line, over the limit, aggressive towards me. I mean, now we're definitely going to differ on policies and issues like we have, but
And that's fine.
yeah, that's what it's all about. But there are aspects of, and it's not as much the Democratic parties, it's just the liberal movement in our country, especially in our state, that have been more aggressive and more attackful or and I'm going to use the word downright hateful. And I've been since 2003. Every 2 years, I've ran in some type of election. You know, 8 years on city council. That's just like state representative. Every 2 years, you run for.
Yeah.
And then the 4 years that I was on, that I ran for mayor, and so so I've pretty much been involved in some type of election. And this is as far as the toxicity and the hateful, mean atmosphere. This is the worst that I've seen in my political career. However, I will preface that by saying not as much in my race as with other races around the state.
Gotcha.
Myself and my opponent, we've pretty much tried to stick to the issues. But there are, in my case, conservative groups, and in his case, liberal groups that are supporting the one or the other of us, and some of them are fairly nasty. So I think so far we've been lucky because we haven't really seen that in our race, and I hope that's the way it continues until November. As well as my opponent, I'm sure he hopes the same thing.
Yeah.
We've had a small conversation about not anything in depth, but just the little bit I have talked to him, I get the same sense from him, and that's the way it should be. You know, we should differ on issues, and we should contrast ourselves on issues and policies, and because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's the hateful stuff, and it's the mean rhetoric. This is the first time in my political career that I've ever been protested at a party event.
At a Republican Party event? Or?
Yeah, and it's not just happened in my race. It's been kind of a tendency around the state during this election cycle. Is we've several of us Republicans over our positions on the pension and our votes in last legislature. We've actually people showing up at events that we're speaking at to protest us.
Wow. And
that's something.
Well, what's that like? I mean, I had never thought about that, but
I'll be honest with you. The biggest protest that was, I guess, orchestrated against me was at the Harrison County Republican Party's annual Lincoln Reagan Day dinner, and actually they do it lunch. I call it the dinner, but it was lunchtime, and a group of Harrison County retired teachers, and there might have I don't remember who all was there. I know there's the Harrison County. There's several Harrison County retired teachers, several Democrats. My opponent was even there, and they stood outside the country club down there, and they protested all the Republicans going in on the various issues. Now, I applaud their effort. I mean, I think that's what America's all about: being able to get out and speak and protest. And I don't think it was a protest, but I don't think it was like wasn't a disruptive. You know,
okay. It wasn't like what we see just recently where they ran Ted Cruz out of a restaurant downtown. It wasn't like that. Okay.
From what the funny thing about it was it ended up being the last day we met. Our last day of session was actually on a Saturday. So myself and Senator West, because I think the protest was for the most part geared towards, because they were protesting our vote on the pension and the budget and stuff, and both of us was in session. So we both sent some representatives, and then of course Congressman Massey and Agriculture Commissioner Ryan Quarles and some other elected officials were there, and they took the brunt of it.
So this wasn't recently. This was back in March, April, March. Okay.
I think towards the end of April.
Was it? Okay.
And I will say, the people that protested that, they stood out on the sidewalk, they had their signs, they had their chants, but from everything that I heard and seen, it was a protest, but it wasn't over the line.
Okay.
I mean, they were just exercising their rights, but, I found it interesting that they were protesting a group of people that just by the basis of their political thought wasn't gonna vote for the people that they were trying to get a vote for,
Gotcha.
you know?
Yeah.
So you gotta wonder, well, did they really accomplish anything?
Yeah.
But you never know. I mean, but that's something new. We've not seen that, or I haven't in my political career. Liberal groups actually protesting at a party event.
Gotcha. I guess that when it's a joint venture and stuff, you had experienced that beforehand
Yeah,
to some level.
Yeah, I mean, I was in 2017 when Vice President Pence come to Lexington. I was part of that event, and there was a lot of protesters there.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I've experienced protests before, but never. It's not. I mean, this was like almost one party against the other party. We've never really.
Gotcha.
So that's
Okay.
something different. But I mean, I take it all in stride. I mean, if you get into the political arena, you've got to be willing to you're not gonna make everybody happy, and you got to be willing to take some of the good with the bad, so to speak.
Gotcha.
And everybody has a right to their opinion and to exercise their right to protest or support an issue.
Gotcha.
So,
Good segue, taking the good with the bad to the next question. Got a Kentucky Supreme Court decision that's out there looming on the what is called the sewage bill, which was the funding of the pensions. What is it actually?
Senate Bill 151.
It's a Senate Bill 151. That's looming. What are they going to do with that? Okay. My question to you, and I asked the other side the other way, if they come out and they say you all did wrong, you willing to accept that it's been ruled that you all didn't do this right?
no, I am.
Okay.
But if that happens, we're going to have a lot of problems in our state. I don't think a lot of people realize the I can't think of the judge's name, but the lower court judge.
Faulkner? Was it Faulkner?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the lower court judge did not rule that the sewage bill was unconstitutional or illegal. He ruled the process was.
Yes.
He never answered the questions of did we violate the inviolable contract and the stuff that would have made.
Mhm.
So them questions could still be challenged in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
But what he did rule was that the process was that we used it's been used since 1955. Yeah, 55. Well, yeah, mid 50s.
For a long time.
Yeah, long time. And the underlying question or the issue with this is, if you read our state constitution or even our federal constitution, there is a distinct separation of powers.
Mm-hmm.
Got your judicial branch, your executive branch, and your legislative branch.
Yeah.
Well, some attorneys will argue that the Supreme Court shouldn't be weighing in on this issue, on the issue that they're weighing in on, because the legislative body has a right for their own interpretation and to establish the rules that they operate under.
Mm-hmm. And that's the argument that was it Bevan's lawyers? Who's arguing? Is it a Senate lawyer that you all, or a legislature lawyer who's
Actually,
representing
the
you all?
lawyer, there's nobody really representing the legislature. The governor.
So it's the governor's lawyers.
It's the governor. Yeah, the governor's lawyers are arguing the position of the constitutionality.
Okay. And that
versus the attorney general.
And that was their argument, was it not, that really the judicial doesn't have authority
to
to weigh in here?
Yeah, and because the issue is who establishes the operating procedures of the legislature,
Mm-hmm.
i.e. the Senate or the House. Is it the legislative bodies or is it the judiciary? Well, if it's a judiciary, we don't have a distinct separation of powers.
Gotcha. So now I understand that. Because when I was reading and watching their arguments, I thought, why are they making this argument? I see what you're saying now.
But the biggest issue that we're going to have to face is if the lower court's ruling is upheld, where are we going to be at in the state? Because thousands of laws since 1955 will now they could all be invalidated.
So if somebody just dislikes a law, they can challenge
They
it.
can challenge it.
If they have the money to go to a court and do that kind of stuff.
So I'm not real sure where we're going to end up with this. I see the argument that they're trying to make, or the other side is with this being unconstitutional.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, why all of a sudden that we have a Republican majority is it unconstitutional when for the last 50-some years the Democratic majority used it freely? I mean, the budgets that's been passed and everything over the last for a lot of years have been passed the same way.
Same way.
So it's going to create more. If it's upheld, it'll create more issues. And the problem.
If it's upheld, meaning ruled unconstitutional?
Yes. If the process is ruled unconstitutional, then the process will have to change. But in the midst of changing that, how many people are going to start? I mean, there's people that are setting. I'll give you. I can't think of the actual bill number or whatever. But there was a law passed. Governor Beshear signed it into law. It was an effort to combat some of the opioid problem, but it made some tougher penalties. Well, you've got people sitting in jail because of that law. Well, if this is ruled unconstitutional, they can challenge that.
So the same process that you all used is the process that was used to pass it. So if your process is ruled unconstitutional, then those people in jail
Could possibly
have a venue to make an argument. Now, whether the judge or not decides on their case is a different matter,
if
but they
can
can change it, challenge it.
If they won their argument, then they've been incarcerated for ever how many years because of an unconstitutional law.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, it opens up all kinds of
Potentially,
potential litigation. And so I'm not real sure. The thing that really disturbs me is KERS especially. It's 13-14% funded. Well, the $3.3 billion that we added, that we were
KERS, let's back up for a second. KERS, Kentucky Employee Retirement System, which stands for the state workers.
State workers,
you have the
correct.
CERS, which is the county, and that's the county workers
Correct.
like here at Panel. Then you have the KRTH, which is the Kentucky Retired Teachers.
Yes.
So in the KERS, for the state workers, that doesn't include state police or those kind of things. That's a separate group also.
But
It's funded at, if they owed $1 billion, let's say, they only have 13% of the $1 billion to pay. Is that what you're saying?
More or less.
Okay.
But they're the one, when they're at 13% funding, they're the ones that's the closest to going insolvent and bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that happens, that'll affect every other pension we have. We have 5 pension systems in the state, and that'll affect every one of them. And so everybody will lose if one of them goes bankrupt. Well, the $3.3 billion will, if this is upheld,
Mm-hmm.
the $3.3 billion does not go into the pension. And so we're back to square one, but we're another year closer to going insolvent.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I mean, it could really put all of our retirees and people in the pension system in a more precarious situation than they were before we started.
I mean, it's a very, very, go back to the lawsuit with Judge Ray Corns, which created CARA. And the reason why I know Judge Ray Corns is that name, Berea College graduate right here, right? Judge Ray Corns, Berea College graduate. Gotta get my, you give an EKU plug,
No,
I gotta get
yeah.
a Berea College plug
Okay.
in there. But anyhow, that was a very historic lawsuit.
Yes.
And this potentially, one way or the other, has a chance to probably be the next historical lawsuit about what's going to be decided.
But you know, if the Supreme Court strikes the lower court's ruling down,
Mhm.
and they, for lack of a better term, side with us,
Mhm.
well, the people that brought this lawsuit could still come back and file a lawsuit. Well, the law itself is unconstitutional
Gotcha.
because he never made a ruling on that.
Uh-huh.
So this, regardless of what happens with this, it's not, it's a long way from being resolved.
Yeah. If it's challenged again, will it go ahead and go into effect on January 1st? And then if the judge comes back, rules your all's favor, they decide to challenge now the constitutionality of the law itself, does it still go into effect and then becomes retroactive?
I'm not real sure.
Okay.
That would be a good question for our attorneys out there. But, I mean, I would assume that if somebody was gonna file a lawsuit against it,
Mhm.
then they would file an injunction to keep it from going
Gotcha.
while it was decided.
Yeah,
Is what
you're
I would
right.
assume. And I think that's what, but, you know, our attorneys, they know the laws better than I do, and they know how to manipulate them to their, I mean, that's what they get paid for and they're trained to do,
Yeah.
to understand the laws and know how to work them for the benefit of their clients, so.
Gotcha. Well, kind of staying in the education realm, okay? Well, let's touch upon that process because we've had this conversation before. As you heard that night, well, let's see, it was a Thursday night, I remember that it went through. At what point in time did you realize on that Thursday, Wednesday, the process that was going to go through? And what was your reaction when you kind of said, oh, we're going to handle it this way?
We recessed, or the House recessed. We had a call. We had our caucus meeting. The Democrats had theirs, but we had a caucus meeting. I don't remember the time. It was in the afternoon. 1, 2
Afternoon.
o'clock.
That's fine.
But shortly after lunch, we had
Yeah.
a caucus meeting, and they explained to us in our caucus meeting how the process worked.
They being
House leadership.
House leadership,
Or
Republican
Republican
leadership, yeah.
So that's at the point. I knew we were going to be moving forward with some legislation, but that's at the time that I truly, you know, I'm one of the new guys. I've got more questions than I do answers on some of this stuff. And of course, a lot of us new guys, we were all questioning, well, can we do this? And then they give us tons of examples of how it's been used since 1955. And yes, because we've done this, and this, and so we moved
So you new guys, and I mean, what was it, 20-some new guys? Because it was the biggest freshman class ever?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I can sit here and count them up, but
Well, it was 20-some. It was a
15,
lot.
20,
Yeah,
yeah.
15, 20. So you all questioned in your caucus leadership, you questioned the process of how
and
it
it
was
wasn't as much. I mean, we wanted to understand as much as anybody.
Yeah.
But we were. I mean, when you sit there and they tell you, they said, well, they passed the last several budgets have been passed this way, this law. I mean, they give us. So you could see that this had been the standard process for all these years.
And the standard process by one party, two parties, both
It would have
parties?
been both parties because before this time it would have been the Democrats were in the leadership role.
Okay.
So both parties have used it,
Okay.
and both parties have used it to their advantage.
Gotcha.
I mean, I never went back to verify any of this, but I had multiple veteran representatives down there tell me that this was the way Stumbo passed his budget when he was Speaker of the House
Mhm.
on the last day all the time.
Okay.
But if you wait to that point, the members of the House or the members of the Senate, we lose our ability to override a veto.
Mhm.
And of
So
course,
if you didn't pass it on that day,
we didn't have enough time.
you wouldn't have been able to override any governor's veto.
Correct.
Did the governor veto that bill,
The pension bill.
the pension bill?
No, he signed it.
He signed that one. Okay.
He vetoed our budget and our tax reform bill.
And did you have enough time and votes
Yes.
to override it?
We made sure all of our vote. We made sure that we had everything done to where we could override vetoes. I mean, we wasn't expecting vetoes, but you know,
Yeah.
we wanted to be able to exercise our power just like he can exercise his.
Gotcha. So as you look back at the process and how it all thought, and I know we did a story on this back at that time, and we talked back at that time, but as you know, 6 months later, whatever, what's your thoughts, feelings upon those last 4 or 5 days and how everything played out?
They were so tumultuous. Did that sound right?
That sounded right to me.
I'm slipping over. It was, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the session, it was a relief just to be done with it.
Mhm.
of course, this is my first budget session, first budget I ever voted on, and I'm thinking back just over my dog, I don't ever remember this much as far as the protesting and all that in Frankfurt at this point. I don't remember ever seeing or witnessing that. So it was, so at the, by the time we reached the end of the session, I felt like we done some good, and I think we done a lot of good. I mean, to be able to put $3.3 billion and fund the pension 100% the first time in over a decade, I was very proud of that, still proud of that. I was proud of the fact that we were able to find the revenue to keep the funding in there for our SEEK fund. I mean, we increased the SEEK funds to the highest level ever, which that's a statement in itself. We were able to restore the funding to transportation. So we were able to help phase in some of the liability that our local governments was facing. I felt like we've really done a lot of good. And when you look at our budget, the budget was balanced, and we funded the pension 100%.
Gotcha.
As well as other things.
Gotcha. As you get ready to go, let me say it this way, as you look forward to the future, are there things in education that you think needs to be addressed that you all weren't able to get done, things you just couldn't get enough votes, things that you look at now, go, okay, we need to tweak this? What are some things that would be that you would want to see be done if elected in the next 2 years as far as education?
I think we really, as a state and as a legislature, we need to concentrate on all of the bureaucratic red tape that our teachers are faced with. They can't teach anymore. You know, they've got to meet this standard, they got to meet this report, or get this report done, or they got to meet this testing deadline or guidelines. I mean, you're a retired teacher. I think we need to allow our teachers to teach. Mm-hmm. The government needs to get out of it to the point to where we can let them educate.
Yeah.
And I think, and you see it all over the country, and I think this is one of the reasons that there seems to be a push for some of your other alternative education sources like homeschooling or charter schools or private schools or what have you, is because we have created such a boondoggle, for lack of a better term, for our teachers and our educators that operate in the public education system. They can't teach anymore. And we're draining the lifeblood out of all of our teachers because they're not able to do what they want to do, which is teach and educate our young people, which is what we need them to do.
Yeah.
We've got so much bureaucratic BS that they've got to meet and do, and some of it's needed, but some of it isn't. Some of it's repetitive. We need, as a society, as a state, as a legislature, we need to sit down, both sides, and figure out how can we make our public education system better, and how can we allow our teachers to be teachers.
No. Sounds like something maybe you hear at home and at family reunions.
Well, sometimes.
For those of you who may not know, his wife is a middle school public education teacher. Your
Sister-in-law is
sister.
elementary school, and then my other sister-in-law is professor of nursing or an associate professor of nursing at NKU.
I thought Angie was a teacher. Angie's not.
Angie was. She worked. She wasn't a teacher, but she worked in the school system.
Okay.
With like the alternative school system in Campbell County, and for the life of me, I can't remember what her title is. She done more than just a normal
Gotcha.
teacher's aide, but.
Yeah, no, having been 8 years in alternative school, yes,
But yeah,
everybody in that program does a
she
little
worked
bit
in
more.
the education system as well.
Okay, all right. So, you know, anything you talk about the bureaucracies and those kind of things, and you had to make some tough cuts for education and those kind of things. A question that is confusing is not the word, but somebody in some time beforehand created a transportation formula, somebody in Frankfurt, and said this is what we should fund, and nobody has ever funded it to the level that the funding says that it should be. Is there any thoughts or any discussion that was given to you all about why using I don't know if it was the governor or legislator who created this formula 15, 20 years ago, I don't know. But is there any thought process about why the formula that, and this is an issue that a lot of superintendents bring up, I'm, even in my story with Joe Berkeley.
You're talking about the transportation fund.
Yes, yes, because even Joe Berkeley had said that if they would fund the transportation funding to the level that their own formula says, it would solve a whole host of problems for Pendleton County schools. So have they ever give you a reason why this is a formula they came up with and they don't fund to the level of their own formula?
Not yet.
Okay.
And I say not yet. I sat on the education committee, and I really, and you know, a lot of people, that's not one of the premier, you know, that's not one of the committees a lot of legislatures want to be on. They want to be on the ones that are making more your laws that affect local government and stuff like that, like local state government committee and y'all know and different things. But I'm on the education committee. That's one of the committees I'm on. I consider myself really fortunate to be on there. One, because in Pendleton and Harrison County, two of my biggest counties in my district, the number one employer is Departments of Education or the school boards. And plus, with my wife and my family being in the profession, I've really learned a lot and I understand a lot more. But to answer your question directly, it's not come up in conversation other than when we were talking about the budget and trying to put the funding that was taken away or that was proposed to be taken away back in there.
Mhm.
But that's still not at 100%.
Yeah.
Like you
Do you know
pointed out.
what the percentage is?
No, I really don't. And I do think once when that gets resolved, or not the budget, but the pension issue.
The lawsuit.
Yeah. Once when all that gets resolved, I do think these are things that we're going to be looking at down the road. If not this session, maybe the next session after that. Because with our eagerness to reform our tax code and modernize our tax code and hopefully find more additional revenue like we did last session,
Mhm.
these are things that we're going to be looking at because not only does some of the programs like this need to be funded fully, if we've got regulations and laws that mandate that, then why ain't we following the regulations and laws?
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like they are going to be looked at, and but right now our number one priority with our budget last session was to come up with the $3.3 billion to fully fund the pensions and to create a mechanism that would pay down the unfunded liability.
Gotcha.
And so although that's not a small issue, but in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't the priority issue. So we concentrated, and I mean, we were back and forth right up until the last minute. That's why the bill that we passed was finally passed tonight.
Gotcha. So, and actually, that's a great segue to the next question that's on the list here. You mentioned about modernizing the tax reform. Simple question. In your philosophy, where should Kentucky be generating revenue from?
Right now, Kentucky's, up until our tax reform bill, our tax code is a production-based tax system or tax code. And for the people that don't understand that, you get taxed on your production. Individuals get taxed on their income, the amount of money they make and earn. Businesses and stuff get inventory taxes and stuff on their production. I think our state needs to move more to a consumer-based tax code.
Okay.
And what a consumer-based tax code, and you can look at Texas and Tennessee, there are two states that have it, and there's some other states as well. But the consumer-based tax code, it's based on, you know, like sales tax on services, sales tax on stuff that you buy. It's what you as a consumer is going to acquire, more or less. And the states that have a consumer-based tax code, they have larger amounts of revenue. They are able to fund most of their projects and interest in their budget.
Mm-hmm.
And like in Tennessee, the average family income in Tennessee is higher than the average family income in Kentucky. So my philosophy is I want to be able to create a tax code that allows you, the worker, to keep as much and all of the money that you earn. If we, the goal with the tax revenue bill that we passed, it's the first step. if a lot of people, we brought the tax code down. For most people in our state is in the 5.8 to 6% tax bracket.
Say that again.
They're in the 5.8 to 6% tax.
Most of the people in
Most,
Kentucky.
yeah, the average person.
Now, when you say most, what is most? 51%, 70,
You know,
80?
I'm not real sure on. It's over 51%, but
Okay.
I don't know the exact. But it's the average working person in Kentucky
Okay.
is it.
Is in the 5.8 to 6%.
Yes.
So what did your all's tax?
Our tax reform bill that we passed brought everybody down to a flat rate of 5%.
So 100% of the people are now at 5?
Everybody's at 5%. Now, if you are at or below the poverty level, you're not going to pay a 5% anyways because of some of the tax. I'm not a tax attorney,
Gotcha.
so I don't know all the correct lingo for all this. But in essence, if you're making at or below the poverty level between your federal and your state taxes, you're not paying taxes on the money you got.
Gotcha.
In essence.
Yeah.
And so the average Kentuckian is going to see a reduction in their income tax next year.
So, and that started January 1st of this, was it retroactive back to January 1st of this year? So that when we're filing taxes at the end of 2018, or 2018, we'll have the new tax rate?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll be able to apply. Now, with that being said, we still had to not only find new revenue, but we had to account for the revenue that we were going to lose by reducing. So
Mhm.
that's where we come in, where we started putting taxes on some of the services, like landscaping and lawn care, country club memberships. I'm trying to think of some of the
Bowling.
Bowling.
One of them that you all
Auto
take the
mechanics.
most heat on has been car mechanics.
Yes.
Somebody goes in, gets their oil changed, they're now paying taxes on that when they
Correct.
didn't. And why do you? What was the reasoning for the selection of the ones that were selected?
I was not part of the committee that made the selections.
Okay.
I know that as we move forward, you're going to see more taxes on more services.
Mhm.
I can almost guarantee you're going to see taxes on lawyers' services and
So you're saying that if the Republican have the leadership, because obviously
yes,
you're not privy to the
It-
Democrat leadership's
if the
decisions.
Republicans stay in the majority, what we did was the first step, and our ultimate goal is to do away or bring your personal income tax rate down to 0, and our tax code would be based on a consumption-based tax code.
Okay, so, and you said, now, well, actually, you said legal was one, so lawyer services.
Yeah, and that's
What were some of the other ones that you may think that you may see
Well, I
sooner
mean,
than later?
There's a myriad of them. I mean, I don't know if we would do this, but some of the states that have a consumption-based tax code, there's taxes on groceries.
Yeah.
And
Now, would you be supportive of
well,
that?
it all depends on how the legislation is written, because the argument is that as we put these taxes on these, like grocery, I mean, we haven't done groceries, but like auto mechanics,
Mhm.
that we're systematically targeting the poor and putting our tax burden on them.
Yeah.
I don't buy that argument. I don't agree with that argument, because at the end of the day, if you're poor, you're still going to pay income tax, and there's subsidies that'll give you, if you're at a certain level, you're not going to pay as much tax as somebody.
Yeah.
But you're still paying income tax. You have no choice in that.
But you just said that if they're at the poverty level
If they're-
below, they wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me rephrase.
okay,
If you let's ignore the poverty level.
okay.
If you are, say you've had your house burns down.
Uh-huh.
You had some unfortunate event to where you're struggling this year
Mhm.
with your money, and let's say you make $75,000 a year, so you're going to see, you're going to have to still pay your income tax regardless
Yes.
of what your unfortunate circumstances were. But if you're in a consumption-based income, you might be able to survive. You might have to cancel your country club membership, and you might, or you don't have to buy or pay somebody to mow your grass. You might change your own oil. If you're in a consumption-based tax code, you, the consumer, has the ability to determine when you're gonna pay the higher tax, because I mean.
Through your discretionary spending,
Yeah,
you
and-
choose what
and-
taxes to pay and when.
Exactly, and, you know, if you've had something unexpected come up and it's cost you a lot of money, you can go without this for a while, or you might buy this month, or that, I mean, you've got the, but if you're on a production base, you don't get that choice, you still have to pay it.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I like about the consumption-based tax, everybody pays it. And when I say everybody, it's not just the citizens of Kentucky, it's everybody traveling through our state, coming to our state. When they buy the stuff in our state, they're gonna help put money in our general fund to help our state. So you have the opportunity there
Mhm.
to find new revenue.
Gotcha.
And that's one of the things that's appealing to me about that, is because, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the Ohio Navy coming down 75
Yeah.
over the lakes on the weekends.
Oh, I worked for a year in the JCPenney program in Somerset.
Oh, did you?
And got lucky enough to go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. And during that, they were presenting about who are the customers that come in the summer, and it's up here, it's Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati, and I was amazed. Of course, this was back in 1989, 90, and I'm sure it hasn't changed that much, but it was amazing on the vast percentage that was coming from this area to Somerset, to Burnside, and those kind of things, and spending money.
But the beauty of it is, the people from Cincinnati, Ohio, they don't pay a tax to us on a production base.
Just the sales tax.
But when you go to a consumption-based tax, if they come across that river to buy a car, to buy a boat, or they travel down to the lakes and they stop and eat somewhere or get fuel, they're gonna help fund and provide revenue for our state.
Yeah.
So you got more people paying into the pot, which hopefully you can create more revenue. And once we create more revenue, that's when we can fully fund a lot of this stuff going to our school boards and our local governments, to where they can possibly, maybe at some point, reduce your property taxes.
All right, let's touch upon something you said. Let's go back to that property level, because you said the potential of groceries. Right now, we don't have sales tax on food, milk, the basics. You know, maybe we have sales tax on cookies because that's not a necessary need. But we don't upon eggs, vegetables, things that you have. What do you see the system being on those kind of items that are basic necessities of life?
I don't see us as a state taxing the basic necessities of life.
Okay.
I don't personally, and I see us taxing like we are. I mean, you know, I'm an avid animal. I'm an avid animal lover. I had 2 dogs, a cat, a turtle. I mean, I love my pets, and we're paying taxes on veterinarian services. Been highly criticized on that. But at the end of the day, if we don't levy taxes on some of these additional services, and in some cases luxury services, then the only other option we have is to continue to attack people's income and their property.
Well, let me, and that actually what you just said made me thought of the question. Is this something that, I mean, if you're doing both, then you're kind of double taxation, because you're taxing our income and you're slowly transitioning to this conception.
But as we raise one, we're lowering the other one. So,
But what that actually was going to lead to my question. What type of time frame are we talking about where we go zero income tax, that we're going to have this double potentially go on?
I personally like to see it sooner than later, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of it's going to depend on how the elections turn out in November, and so we can see where we're at. And I mean, your labor unions, your Democratic groups, KA, they're all making probably the biggest concerted effort they ever have in their life to beat Republicans this time.
Gotcha.
And part of that is because, one, we got the majority last time, and some of the issues, there's a myriad of issues of why they're doing it. But in the past several years, this has probably been the biggest concerted effort made against the Republican Party, who's now in the majority leadership positions. And if they don't have a hold on to the majority to where they remain in leadership, this could all end in January.
So,
So I don't know what the time frame is. I mean, as a member of the Republican caucus, we would like to see it over the next, just 2-3 years.
can you, let's say Republicans retain the majority in both places. During this midterm, I don't even know what's the exact term that's called on this upcoming session?
Short session, I guess.
Short session. Are you allowed to adjust taxes and that kind of stuff, or do you have to wait again until the budget year?
We don't have to. Most of your appropriation bills are going to be done in the budget year.
Okay.
There's some things you can do. You'll see tax code or tax bills. You'll see them in the session. There'll be some discussion about it. But right now, you're not going to see a lot of discussion on any of that until this Supreme Court decision.
That's sure.
Because we've got to figure out, because if everything that we've done, if that process is unconstitutional, then our recent revenue bills and budget and everything are all unconstitutional.
Gotcha.
So it's hard to say. I mean,
It goes back to what we said, the historical level
Yeah.
of this Supreme Court decision is going to determine a lot of things. Let's talk about the negative on the consumption base. The opponents of the consumption base, you mentioned Texas and Tennessee, they bring up Kansas as what's the difference on what you're all proposing to Kansas, which is more agricultural based than us, and then what didn't work there?
and I can't think. When Kansas passed their law, they took a step that we didn't.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think, it had something, doggone, I got this on my desk at work, or at my office,
Yeah.
but I can't, I've drawn a blank. Our laws, or what we're pushing for, or we're moving towards, is different than Kansas.
Gotcha.
It's not apples to apples.
Okay.
And that there was a step in theirs that had some dire, unforeseen consequences, and that's why it didn't work in their state.
And you all learned from their failure.
and I will follow up with you and
Okay.
give you, I've got the doggone it. That's one of them moments.
I understand.
I don't consider myself a senior, but it's maybe I'm having a senior moment.
I understand.
But no, but to answer